Fantastic. All right. Well, again, good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited to have you for this year's edition of WASAC's Stakeholder Engagement Sessions, where we share a little bit more about work happening across our agency, as well as provide a preview and some opportunity for discussion on key proposals that may be headed to the legislature ahead of the 2027 legislative session. So if you're coming to us from a K-12 partner, a higher education partner, the state legislature or elsewhere, we're so excited to have you, and we really appreciate your participation today. Before we get started, we'll do a quick round of introductions. So starting off, I want to say hello, my name is Joel Anderson. I'm the Associate Director of Legislative and External Affairs at the Student Achievement Council, and I lead our work around government relations and stakeholder engagement along with our strategy and partnerships team. And so I'll pass it off to my colleagues, Amy, Armin, and then Abby, if you're interested in saying hello as well, that would be great.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Amy Magasos. I am Associate Director with the Strategy and Partnerships team at WASAC, and I lead in the Basic Needs Strategy. And I'm delighted to be with you here today. Passing it off to my colleague Armin.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Armin, and I lead the higher education affordability and finance policy here at the Washington Student Achievement Council. I'll pass it down to Abby.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Chen. I'm an associate director in strategy and partnerships, like many of my colleagues who've introduced themselves. I lead our completion portfolio, which is really about retention and persistence for our current students in post-secondary. Joel, I think it's back to you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Abby. If we could transition to the next slide, that'd be great. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get started today. As I mentioned a second ago, this session is being recorded. Aside from our conversations in the breakout rooms, we're not able to record those, but the recording will be available online afterwards. So for any of your colleagues or other connections who maybe wanted to be here today or signed up and were not able to join us, they can still catch some of the content. In addition, we will also be using the Q&A feature during this call to ask questions. So we would ask that you try to stay on mute as much as possible. But in your menu at the bottom of your screen, if you click the three dots that say more, there is an option for Q&A, and you can submit your questions there anonymously. You can also upvote questions if someone has potentially beaten you to it and you want to uplift their comment as well. Last but not least, we would love for you to use the chat alternatively to introduce yourself to other folks who are on the call. So if you're able, we'd love to just have you put your name and organization in the chat or where else you're coming from today, just so we have a better sense of who's in the room. And there will also be a chance to do introductions in our breakout rooms a little bit later in the call. So wanted to note that as well. But again, please feel free to put your names in the chat, and we'll transition to our agenda slide, please. Thanks, Abby. So just to recap for folks how today's call will go, we'll be starting off with a little bit of background information about the Student Achievement Council, how we operate, and then some of the work that we are doing kind of behind the scenes outside of legislative policy development specifically. That'll be shown through our policy cluster and division highlights. And then we'll be diving into a few potential proposals for the 2027 legislative session. This will include an overview of the proposal, an opportunity to join a breakout room with some of your peers and discuss what's on the table. And then we'll come back and have a couple of comments from our breakout room facilitators to see just kind of what was talked about. We'll close out today with a post-session survey, which we highly encourage you to fill out. And then just a couple of closing comments. I do want to note we have a QR code on this slide to our post-session survey. This is an incredible opportunity. I'm a little biased, but it's a great opportunity to share feedback with us on what you're thinking and feeling, and how we can make this programming better in the future. I'll put a link in the chat to this survey right now, and would encourage you to just click this and have it open throughout the call. And so as you're having thoughts, feedback, questions, etc., please feel free to jot those down. And again, we'll be spotlighting this at the end of the call, so would love to have you fill that out as well. With that, though, I think we are going to transition to our initial content. And so I'm going to turn it over to my co-presenters, Amy and Armin, to get us started. Thanks, guys.
Hello, everyone. If this is your first time hearing about WASAG or you have worked with WASAG previously, it's a little bit of a reminder of what we do. At WASAG, we look at education from a preschool through graduate school, and particularly transition points such as high school to college and careers. We make recommendations to the governor and the legislature on policies and funding to increase educational attainment for all students. We also pursue this mission by administering state financial aid programs, college savings plans, facilitating college access initiatives, and collaborating with external stakeholders to advocate the value of post-secondary degrees and credentials. Next slide. And we definitely don't do this work alone. We have, as the name suggests, the Washington Student Achievement Council has a council of members. And WASAC is governed by 10 members council that provides statewide leadership and policy direction for post-secondary education in Washington. We have representation from K through 12 uh, to students, citizen members, and sectors such as four-year public institutions, two-year public, private institutions, and these members are appointed by the governor. Um, this diverse membership helps ensure that the decisions reflect the perspective of students, educators, employers, and communities across the state. Next slide, please. WASAC strives to increase educational attainment so that Washington can meet its post-secondary education goal. That at least 70% of adults ages between 25 and 44 within each racial and ethnic community and region across the state will have post-secondary credential. Currently, an estimated 62% of Washington adults have a credential beyond high school. To reach our state attainment goal, WASAC has adopted a strategic framework that guides our efforts. This framework centers equity throughout its work in four strategy policy clusters: affordability, enrollment, completion, and basic needs. We believe that if we build an affordable and supportive educational environment, more Washington residents will enroll in and complete a credential bearing a program. Next slide. So, what does WASAC do? One of the things we also work on is as we is the strategic action plan. We refer to it as the SAP. It provides a framework to organize the policy and practice innovation needed to achieve our state attainment goal. This is a forward-looking document into the next 1 year, and we update the SAP every single year. And we do a lot of outreach to a lot of community partners to get feedback for this SAP. The first part of the SAP is an annual snapshot of the landscape and policies of the four cluster areas. Our efforts in practicing equity and building regional partnerships. For equity in each cluster area, affordability, enrollment, basic needs, and completion, this section provides key research and data points and existing federal and state level policies and practices. We also include guiding questions that we hope provoke thinking across all stakeholders to advance the work of each area. I would also point out this section of the SAP represents all partners and stakeholders in the state. It's not about the work of a single state agency or a limited number of institutions, nor is it only about state legislation and budget. It's an overview that emphasizes all sectors of society that have a role to play in the state and community level. The SAP also includes WASAC priorities for each strategic area at the bottom. You will see in the upcoming SAP 2027 that we include the work in areas of practice and policy development, as well as knowledge development with some deliverable and or outcomes within the next year. It may include programs or pilot programs or projects. This is also an area where you might see some direct representation of your work, actually. Unlike a lot of strategic plans, WASAC SAP isn't one that takes a long time to create and then it sits on a shelf for a 5 year. WASAC SAP is adopted every year, like I just mentioned, and it forms a lot of our work with our stakeholders. Um, and we'll share the SAP within the comments so you have access to it. And then I'll hand it to Amy and she'll provide some more information about the SAP.
Hi, everyone. This is Amy Magasos again. I have the pleasure of being able to highlight some of WASAC's priorities in the 2027 Strategic Action Plan to advance the change agenda for increased post-secondary access, success, and attainment in Washington. Later in this session, we're going to be talking about legislative proposals, but legislative action is only one of the ways we push for change in the state. We wanted to be able to uplift today some of the key priorities we're going to be advancing this year through our non-legislative approaches. So developing recommendations through work groups, increasing knowledge for action through data and analysis and partnerships with statewide and national partners. So we'll start first with the affordability strategy. And so deepening our understanding of how Washingtonians pay for college across income levels to inform future policy development is really how we're working to understand how affordability is changing for Washington families and students, especially in these times of economic change. So we're looking forward to having a work group that will be finding agreement on the upper income limit in the financial affordability model and data on the federal, state, and institutional aid. And also, this work group will be exploring how we can clearly measure the expected savings and contributions from current income. Uh, the next area I'd like to be able to highlight is in enrollment. So there's a lot of work in the direct enrollment from high school strategy space, but we'd like to highlight a new initiative with WASAC and partners to better understand and serve opportunity youth. So who are Opportunity Youth? They are 16 to 24-year-olds in Washington who are not connected to K-12 education, higher education, or workforce. And this is really an important population that we need to understand better to increase post-secondary pathway engagement. So in partnership with Northwest Education Access and Sound Reengagement Collaborative, WASAC is working to capture Opportunity Youth data this year. Getting this data is really a priority for the state since among all the data that we track on learners in the state, Opportunity Youth are missing. So whenever a student drops out or disengages, we stop tracking. And I guess we can all agree if we don't track, we can't understand how to reengage those Washingtonians. So Northwest Education Access shared most recent data on Opportunity Youth at the Reengage Washington convening recently, and WASAC's working with the Sound Reengagement Collaborative to publish a brief on Opportunity Youth. If you'd like to learn more about this project and more enrollment strategies, our lead Rati Sudakara will help you with that. In the chat, you'll see the names for all of the leads for the different strategy areas. Next, going around the circle is the strategy of addressing students' basic needs. Basic needs strategies look to addressing the needs of over 50% of Washington post-secondary students who've reported food insecurity, housing insecurity, and homelessness, and other basic needs insecurity in our state. Washington continues to work really hard to increase students' access to existing benefits and to fill gaps with additional resources to address basic needs and security. But today we'd like to highlight an initiative on advancing parenting student success. So why focus on parenting students? 1 in 5 post-secondary students are parenting a dependent. These students face disproportionately high basic needs insecurity, and campuses are not really designed for many of their needs. Also, parenting students can better support their children's educational pathways as they are supported and successful. So WASAC and partners are leading 2 state-level work groups to better understand and address the needs of parenting students in Washington. We'll have a parenting student data work group that will recommend aligned data collection across the states. And the goal there is really making visible parenting students and their experiences so that we can better understand and support their attainment. And Chantel, thanks for that heart there. We will also have a campus practices work group that will be recommending ways that campuses and community partners can bolster parenting student success. And I'm the lead for that. So reach out to me if you'd like to know more about that and other basic needs projects this year. And then the fourth strategy area I'd like to highlight is completion. So in the arena of student success and completion, WASAC is leading an initiative to expand institutional capacity for credit for prior learning, or CPL, with 6 community and technical colleges and 2 universities. And so in this project, participating institutions are provided expert coaching, targeted workshops, and project management support so that they can design and implement policies and frameworks to support awarding credit for prior learning. This is really a long-term project. It started in August 2025. It's going to run all the way through August 2028, but we're excited about how this work can be a model for institutions in the state to improve practice and policy for the benefit of students. So those are some of our highlights from these strategy areas. I'd also like to fill you in on some great highlights from some additional areas in WASAC. If you change to the next slide, please. So continuing the highlights for this year in our Student Financial Assistance Division, I'd like to point you to the Early Path to Washington grant, so WA grant. WASAC is currently piloting WA grant auto qualification for students in 12th grade whose families receive SNAP, or Basic Food Assistance Program. And this innovative program will expand to students in 10th and 11th grades starting this fall. We're very excited about that. Next, I want to highlight the College Access Initiatives Division's incredible work this year in the Washington Completes FAFSA campaign. So the goal here is to get more high school students connected with financial assistance for post-secondary, and WASAC led a statewide advisory board this past year to align and increase financial aid applications across the state in this governor led initiative. WASAC's now analyzing the impact with a report that will be out by November this fall, and will be refining and facilitating the campaign for the 2026-27 academic year. The last area I'd love to highlight is around our Adult Pathways Division work. We have such amazing work that's been happening this year. I'm just going to highlight 3. One is that the Washington Jobs Initiative, which was a $23.5 million grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce, is concluding. It was designed to help more Washington residents get the training they need for good jobs that support a family. And as we wrap up the grant this fall, Washington has met goals in job, education, training, and placement. And I want to highlight that over 5,000 Washington residents enrolled in job training through this, and there's other thousands of Washingtonians that have completed a program and been placed in jobs. So great work on the Washington Jobs Initiative. In the Native American Apprenticeship Assistance Program, which was 2024 legislation, WASAC has partnered with 9 different tribes in Washington to administer approximately $1.6 million in grant aid to more than 160 participants in registered apprenticeships. It's really a first of its kind grant program supporting tribal members in those apprenticeship programs, and we're excited to continue that on in the new year. Last highlight I'd like to offer is the Behavioral Health Conditional Scholarship, also which came from HB 1946 legislation in 2024. It offers post-secondary educational students pursuing a behavioral health field with the opportunity to receive a scholarship in exchange for a service obligation. The scholarship's administered across the program length to ensure degree completion and really minimize financial complications for those students. It was first launched in spring 2025, and the program has provided 30 students across Washington attending one of 13 participating universities with approximately $1.5 million in scholarship aid. And since launching, additional behavioral health fields and college institutions have been included. So we'll share some more information with you. Oh, we have it. Check it out in the chat, links for those programs. And we are just delighted to kind of uplift the great work that's happening for Washington students to help make post-secondary and their kind of career pathways happen. So I'll just pause there, see if there's any questions. I see some great discussion going on in the chat. And feel free to keep adding your questions in the chat if you have any. And I am going to pass this on to Joel to talk more about our legislative proposals for this year.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Amy. I really appreciate it. And to Armin and Abby for your support as well. I think this is a great time to briefly reiterate what Amy shared, which is that, excuse me, so much of the policy development work and even implementation work that we do here at WASAC is actually outside of the legislative process. And so while our focus today is kind of bridging the gap between those two worlds, we always want to have an open door for you all to reach out to us in the areas of basic needs, enrollment, completion, affordability, and other sectors, and see where we can collaborate. And so just want to keep that in mind. And again, thank you to Amy for sharing so many agency highlights. I think it's really cool to see the work that's going on. And we may actually be able to spotlight more of it later this fall in our next stakeholder event. So stay tuned for that. But for the remainder of our call today, we're going to be talking about potential decision package and agency request legislation proposals that WASAC is considering for next legislative session. Originally, thanks for moving the slide, we originally today had planned to talk about 5 or 6 proposals, but a few of those were more administrative in nature. And so as a result, we have streamlined a little bit of our discussion today, and we do intend and plan to get out earlier than the initial 2-hour window that we set. So we will be done a little early, but looking forward to getting your feedback, of course. But first, before we get there, we wanted to share a little bit about where we are in WASAC's stakeholder engagement and policy development cycle. Each year, we do our best to host 4 quarterly events for our stakeholders. Right now, we are in, of course, our engagement sessions, which is a great time to learn more about the work happening across our agency and ideas being brainstormed and developed ahead of the next legislative session. From where we go after these calls, we work on proposals to present to our council in August and then ultimately submit to Governor Ferguson's office and OFM in September. We'll then be doing a fall webinar in October to, again, spotlight some of the more work happening at our agency. And then we wait for a couple of months. When the governor's budget comes out in December, we find out which of our proposals have been approved or denied. And then we launch right into the 2027 legislative session. As we've done over the past couple of years, we do intend to continue hosting a legislative session preview as well as a recap following the end. So that would be in May 2027. But again, we just wanted to make sure folks were kind of grounded in how this larger stakeholder engagement session fits into our cycle of work that we do to get feedback and develop ideas with each other. And again, as Amy and others have noted, below the table, you'll see we have ongoing engagement through all of our policy cluster areas and our other divisions at WASAC as well. So we just really appreciate the chance to engage with you all and hear more about your feedback. And again, really appreciate the time that you all have invested in that work as well. So with that being said, we have 3 proposals to share more about today, and we'll transition to the next slide to kind of get underway. Our first proposal is around increasing financial aid completion and post-secondary attainment. Some folks in this room are well aware and perhaps even very engaged in an initiative called the Washington Completes FAFSA campaign. This was started last fall through an executive order from Governor Ferguson. And across the state, we've actually seen quite a bit of success, not just for priority schools and, populations of students, such as those who are on free and reduced price lunch, but also at large. We have had the largest number of FAFSAs and WASFAs filed as a state in state history. We are very close to our goal of 46,000 applications in the current cycle. And so we are looking to continue improving upon that progress, both for statewide financial aid completion and other metrics that lead ultimately to increased post-secondary attainment in the state. What this idea would look like, it would contain 2 separate prongs, both kind of rooted in saying, we want to invest, in community resources or otherwise place-based support systems. And again, this would have 2 different arms. The first would be expanding our fairly successful priority school program to provide microgrants and technical assistance to school districts for financial aid completion. This is something we've been working on as part of the Washington Completes FAFSA campaign, again, to identify schools that may have larger disparities in financial aid completion among different groups of students. They may be lower in completion overall compared to other schools across the state, or have areas of particular need given the geography of the state as well. And so for any of those reasons, we've been working to identify priority schools and have seen a lot of great progress in increasing their financial aid completion rates above and beyond increases we're seeing in the state as a whole. And so, again, this proposal would allow WASAC to expand the support of our priority schools, specifically for FAFSA and WASFA completion. The second component of this would have to do with providing grants to trusted community partners across the state who can not only provide financial aid completion resources, but also help cultivate a college-going culture in regions of our state where we see lower rates of financial aid completion and or post-secondary enrollment. This is really building on, in addition to the Washington Completes FAFSA campaign, our regional partnerships work. Some folks are familiar here with the Regional Challenge Grant Program. We have 12 incredible partners across the state doing everything from financial aid completion to academic credit for prior learning and other engagement with adult learners. And this is really our attempt to build on this strategy and ensure that we are investing in people on the ground who know their communities best and know how to help students, visualize their path forward in post-secondary. So we are anticipating this request to come with a fiscal note this year. The amount is still to be determined, but right now we're looking at a little over $3 million for the 27-29 biennium. And so I would encourage you a few minutes from now as we talk about other proposals and go out to breakout rooms to think more about this proposal in terms of the partners that you work with in your roles, the partners who might be a good fit to work on an initiative like this with WASAC, whether it's the Washington Completes FAFSA campaign or other interventions that we're proposing across the state. But again, we really appreciate that collaboration and are looking forward to hearing more about that a little bit later in our call. So with that, I'll transition to the next slide for our second proposal to discuss. Transitioning a little bit away from financial aid completion, but still staying in the K-12 space, we are looking at trying to improve access to work-based learning opportunities in Washington, specifically through our existing state work-study program. There's research now nationally to show that work-based learning has a lot of benefits, not just for students in terms of help clarifying their career pathways, improving their outcomes, and even allowing them to earn better wages, but also it can have great effects for employers in Washington state, helping recruit qualified individuals to fill our jobs of the future, whether those are in high demand fields or elsewhere. And we've seen some states across the country, for example, Indiana, very successfully use programs like State Work Study to allow more opportunities for paid internships or other career development chances for students in high school. And so within our state work study program, we've been talking about piloting a new approach for specifically lower income running start students to utilize the state work study program and earn wages for a work-based learning experience. Right now, we're thinking about targeting this opportunity for students in grade 12 who are full-time running start students, eligible for free and reduced price lunch and working in a high demand field. And again, the intent here is to really kind of open the door to what may be possible for Washington students in terms of accessing the benefits of work-based learning. We know many students across our state in high school are already working. Some of them are working at restaurants or businesses. Other folks are working inside the home as caregivers or caregivers for family members, siblings, parents, etc. And we think it's really important to recognize and honor those experiences and also acknowledge that they bring a lot of skills to the table that students can use in the rest of their high school career and in their post-secondary careers as well. So this is a proposal that would be implemented within existing appropriations on a very small scale to start. We're thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 5 to 10 students in the next academic year. But we are really interested in seeing, what feedback could come from this pathway and how it may lead to a broader expansion in the future of our state's ability to provide, again, more work-based learning opportunities for students in the K-12 system. With that, I'll transition to our last slide. And then pause briefly for questions as well. The third proposal today that we wanted to share a little bit more about was around private student loan borrower protections. Some folks here, again, may be aware that there have been a lot of changes at the federal level regarding student loans over the past couple of years. One of those was eliminating Grad Plus loans for graduate students, as well as instituting other caps on loans for current students and future students. There have also been efforts, even in the past couple of months, to limit access to undergraduate loans as well. And so, in addition to the work that we shared a little bit earlier in the call with Amy and Armin, WASAC also has an office of the student loan advocate that does a lot of advocacy and other work on behalf of Washingtonians trying to figure out how to pay off their student loans or how to negotiate plans moving forward to take care of those costs. And so as part of that work, we are very interested in, as an agency, in being responsive to changes at the federal level. One of those is by instituting better protections for our private student loan borrowers. And so we have a proposal that has been introduced in other states across the country to improve transparency and oversight of our private student loan system through a few different measures. This would include requiring private loan companies to register with the state and report on their activities in Washington. It would provide better protections for co-signers who oftentimes really struggle to be released from loans. And in addition to that, it would also end technical defaults for all reasons other than non-payment. So ensuring that, as long as folks are making their payments on time on student loans, that they cannot be put into a defaulted status. And then lastly, allowing some new forgiveness for loans in the event of total or permanent disability for a student. And so again, this package is part of a larger group of proposals that have been advocated for in many states around the country. And so we are really excited about what this could mean for Washington State and are looking forward to hearing more of your thoughts on how student loan changes and current issues come up in your line of work, if at all, and how a proposal like this may help protect students in our state who currently hold private student loans. We are working on a fiscal estimate for this bill. It would require some collaboration with other agencies in the state, particularly the Department of Financial Institutions and the Department of Licensing, interestingly enough. So we are working on that and seeing what may be possible, but we thought it was important today to surface this and get folks' feedback as we head a little bit further into our policy development process. So I'll stop there for a moment. No need to move the slide, but would love to ask for questions. And I do see we have one question in the chat. It looks like about our state work study proposal. It mentions, could technical high school students be included or those attending skill centers? That is a great question. I think we are obviously still kind of developing this proposal. And so as we head into breakout rooms soon, I think any thoughts on, how we can make sure we're including all types of students or targeting students who may be most able to use an opportunity for increased work-based learning, we would love to have that feedback. What I will say in terms of what we initially have kind of been thinking about over the past couple of months, this would initially be limited to students at a handful of community colleges who, again, are enrolled in full-time Running Start. And so I'm not sure if that would necessarily include technical high school students at this point, but definitely something to kind of consider as we keep shaping this policy and if it's something we'd like to move forward. So thanks for that question. I really appreciate it. I also see a question in the chat that I think has been answered a little bit. In terms of how we would define low income students for a proposal like this, we are thinking of using free and reduced price lunch, which often translates to fee waivers in the Running Start program. And so this would be, again, not necessarily a catch-all for all students, but one way that we could be able to determine eligibility for the pilot. And I know in our breakout rooms and on the slides as well, we have a few more notes on what we're thinking about. But if you have thoughts on this proposal in terms of eligibility or other measures that we should be considering, again, we would love to hear more about that in our breakout rooms. So with that, Abby, if we could transition to our next slide, that would be great. Awesome. So we are now at the point in our session where we are going to have some discussion. And we have had a couple folks join the call in the last few minutes. So if you are not immediately in a breakout room, we will do our best to make sure that you are added to one. But in the meantime, we'll be heading into discussions that will last about 25 minutes about the proposals that we just heard about. The discussion questions you see on the slide are what have been provided to your facilitators as well. And it looks like a copy of our slide deck with descriptions of these proposals has been put into the chat as well. So we would encourage you to use that resource. In addition to these breakout rooms being an opportunity to just say what stands out to you about these proposals, good, bad, otherwise, etc. We really encourage you again to think about how they may relate to the work that you do in your current roles and with the students, that you currently serve. And so if there are considerations that we should be thinking about that you don't see mentioned today, we'd love to hear about them. If you think there are certain types of messaging or data or other positions that would help us advance proposals like these, we would love to hear about them. And of course, if these proposals, perhaps don't align with the work that you do, and if you have concerns or other questions, it's really important that we were able to record those. And so, again, I want to say a huge thank you to our breakout room facilitators for volunteering this morning. We do have our rooms set up now. They'll last for about 25 minutes, and there will be a 2-minute warning before coming back. So I wanted to make sure conversation was not fully cut off. But again, we will be doing our best to ensure that everyone has a chance to contribute. And so with that, I will pause one more time and see if there are any other questions. It looks like there's been a little discussion in the chat. But otherwise, we're going to be good to go. So I will pause our recording since we can't record in the breakout room.
Say, starting off, that much of the energy was focused on the state work study proposal. Really appreciate the comments. Some questions were around considering offering this for middle income students and not just low income, especially given the fee waivers that are in place and some of the economic pressures that middle income students may be facing. Another key point was to keep it simple, make sure that we're not incorporating too many restrictions. There were some questions about whether, the focus on high need jobs, for example, which might vary from region to region, but also emphasizing that this is a time for exploration for Running Start students and to keep it as open and supportive of that as possible. And then I'll just note on the financial aid completion and post-secondary attainment, some comments about the needs for support for communities and knowing that schools need resources and supports and the benefit of community partners in that. And also some suggestions about looking at existing investments. 1835 Navigators was an example to make sure that that's part of the picture as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Amy. I really appreciate that recap. I believe that my colleague Dawn is also able to share a couple highlights from her room.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so looking at the enrollment, the financial aid completion and post-secondary attainment. People were in general consensus that this is a good idea. And there was some interest in trying to understand what the additional funding would be used for. Is it for staffing? Is it for, expanding programs? And then we kind of talked about, cultures on high school campuses and maybe focusing on that kind of work, and looking at the support of different student subcategories like foster youth, students who have experienced unaccompanied homelessness, and supporting them, and making sure that we have people that are understanding that work and how to support them in the best capacity. Looking at what already exists in the community, and people were kind of wanting, they kind of wanted a little bit more information about this component. And then looking at the state work study pieces, people were in general pretty interested in this, and looking at the programs that already exist. So somebody from LC or Peninsula College was talking about there's a aluminum welding program that has a mobile classroom that is outside of the business. So they were talking about how a student could potentially work in that classroom and then be employed, or learn in that classroom and then be employed by the employer. And so people are seeing the ways that these things could dovetail together and work really well. And then the question also came about, because there's an understanding that this is within existing funds. Is there future plans to expand this in the near future? And they were also talking, but this is a student that was talking about how their experience with state work study is that there was never enough hours to work, and that that funding was kind of stretched on that. And then as far as the student private loan borrower protections go, we were talking about when it does get into the private loan market, that it's always a good idea to have extra student loan protections.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Don. I love all the branching off points of those ideas. So I appreciate you capturing those. There are, I know, two more comments. I think Shannon Ladymon, I think you had some highlights from your room. And then I know Sarah Cabbage from Carly's room. We'll turn to you in just a second for a comment as well.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, we had some great discussion. So around financial aid completion, we had some really good questions about adult learners. So it seems like we are really looking at the high school completion, but there are also a lot of adult learners. So just asking, are we measuring their completion rate? Are we doing outreach to them? There was some suggestions of partnering with workforce boards, since they already work with a lot of adult learners, and sharing some of that FAFSA information with them. For the state work study, everybody's said, work-based learning is great. So it's great if we can do more of that. But also, colleges are very interested in participating. So we had somebody from Bellingham Technical College who said, how can I get involved in the pilot? We've got full-time Running Start students. So I think, however, outreach is happening for that. If people who are interested can get in contact with you, sharing that information of who to contact would be really helpful. I know that Inez previously had said that probably we're partnering with SBCTC and they'll find people, but if we also want to take any interest directly from the colleges, that'd be great. And then for the private student loan borrower protections, this was very interesting. So there's interest in exactly what this would look like, in that would there be anything like preferred vendor lists, anything like that? Or is it just the legislation that would be sort of outside of what the people at the colleges are working with? For the supporting Washingtonians with private student loans part, if that is going to be in terms of like navigators, people who are helping, there was a thought that could be super helpful for anybody who is dealing with federal loans, because they often can't get counseling or humans who help them with that process. So that would be nice. And then Lauren at DSHS also had a really good connection to the alignment. They work with students who've had traumatic brain injury. And so just very interested in exactly how that would affect their students, and becoming more aware of how the the people that they work with are going to be affected by current loan rules versus these updated loan rules. So that might also be a great area for partnership on information gathering and working together. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Shannon. It sounds like we may have some follow-ups for our student loan advocate in that conversation as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing folks' notes from the breakout rooms. But thanks again for that overview. And then Sarah, I would love to hear your thoughts as well.
So we talked mostly about the first couple of proposals, a little bit about the loan proposal or private loan protections. The one thing that came up for us was just not reinventing the wheel, and that showed up in a couple of different ways. Number one is with the high determining what's a high demand field suggested for the state work study proposal. Just making sure that that's aligned with what's going to be coming out from the governor's office about the workforce Pell alignment, so that we aren't creating a bunch of different systems for determining what counts as high demand. And also looking at models that are that have been successful, that have been working around increasing FAFSA and FAFSA completion. I think Amy already mentioned this, but the navigators that I'm familiar with, the Navigator program that has been done in conjunction with community colleges, having staff going out and like spending time on site in local high schools, supporting FAFSA completion and enrollment and engagement with the college, and just make sure that that model is considered when you're looking at ways to support high schools and ways to set up systems that can support that FAFSA attainment.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sarah. I really appreciate that. And thank you everyone who's shared out. I think just on the surface, like we already have some great comments and other points to build on, not just these proposals, but other work that WASAC is doing in the policy development and research spaces. So again, with my colleagues, very excited to read over these notes and follow up with many of you, hopefully, about these ideas. So I think we will transition, I think, in case there are any other comments, into kind of our closing here. Wanted to re-up our post-session survey. Thanks so much to my colleague Abby for sharing that in the chat again. I promise you there are only a few required questions that are all pretty short, but there are also chances to provide more lengthy feedback if you're interested. So again, please feel free to open that up and take a few minutes and let us know kind of what you thought of the content today, how you thought about how you felt about the facilitation and other components. But while you're pulling that up, we just wanted to take a moment to share a little bit more about WASAC's external affairs and legislative work. In case you haven't met me before or heard about our S&P division, we work on making sure that the legislature, governor's office, and other state agencies, have relevant, timely higher education policy ideas to potentially implement to improve post-secondary attainment here in Washington State. We also do summary materials about each legislative session and budget with respect to higher education. So like this call, we do a webinar recapping each legislative session, as well as a preview actually in January of every year. And then we are continuing to cultivate relationships, not just with state legislators, but also with federal and local stakeholders as well. So we communicate with Washington's congressional delegation. We talk with local elected officials as appropriate when ideas come up that we can be involved in and be supportive of. So on that note, again, just want to say a huge thank you to everyone today for not just participating as an attendee, but thank you to our volunteer facilitators from WASAC, our note takers, our Zoom hosts, and everyone. I really appreciate just the incredible breadth and quality of the discussions that were had today, it sounds like. So with that being said, I will pause and see if there are any other final questions. But if not, I think that kind of actually brings us to a close today. So again, we're finishing out earlier than expected. If anyone asks why your calendar is held till 3, I hope you can answer a few extra emails in that time. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. And we hope you all have a great, wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.